And they're normal.
Okay.
And we're back.
Guys.
Sorry.
All right, so we are going to do a lesson on slope formula today because there will be situations when you guys get into next year and the year after where we will use slope. And actually, we're going to do a little bit of it this year where they're not easy numbers to count. We may have decimals and fractions and things.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about a formula where you don't have to draw the picture every time. We are going to start with a picture just to convince you that it works. Okay, so in this little box, which is a little too small, we're going to try to write the formula. So you'll just have to write tiny or go outside the box. Either way works. So the formula is y2 minus y1. And the 2 and the 1 are little and they're below just a little bit. It's kind of the opposite of a power. They're below. It basically means the second y minus the first y. And then there's a fraction bar, x2 minus x1. So that's the second x minus the first x. So basically what this is going to do is the y2 minus y1 will give us the rise.
Wait,
And the x2 minus x1 will give us the run. Yes, question?
what gives you the 2 and the 1?
I'm going to show you here in a second. It just means second and first. So if we look at this problem that they've given us down here, find the slope of the line that contains the points -2, -3, and 1, 2. Basically, in the first point, this would be x1 and y1. It just means the first x and the first y. And then this would be x2 and y2. Now, something that's really crazy to think about is you could switch these points and put 1, 2 first and -1, -2 second. And the math will look a little different because you'll subtract it in a different order, but you will still get the same slope no matter what if you just follow the formula. So we're supposed to do y2 minus y1. So the second y is 2, and then there's a minus in the formula.
Keep changing.
And then y1 is -3. We'll do that in a second. And then x2 minus x1 is just 1 minus -2. So Adrian was saying keep change in the background. That's basically when you have these double negatives, it just means that we're going to keep the first number, change this to addition, change this to addition. It basically turns this into plus.
Wow.
And so this becomes 2 plus 3, which is 5, and 1 minus -2, which is 3. I'm going to start giving marks.
What?
You know what? I shouldn't have to say this in the middle of a video, but I can't stop it, and so they're going to listen to me get on to you. You need to stop. It's your last warning. All right, so I did put a graph on here just so I could convince you that this formula works and it gets the same thing as the graph. If I graph the point -2, -3, that'd be over here, left 2 and down 3. So this is -2, -3. And if I do the point 1, 2, that's over here. That's over 1 and up 2. And so if I'm going from this point to this point, we are going from left to right. You could still, or I guess I should draw the line between them just so you can see, okay, there's a line that goes between them. And I could see that my rise would be up 5, and my run is over 3. And this will work for any numbers. So we're going to use relatively easy numbers today, except there's a lot of negatives. But we're going to use this formula later in story problems that's going to have money with dollars and cents. We might have some with fractions. Later on in high school, you may have some things where they throw in some square roots and weird stuff. This formula works no matter what kind of numbers you're looking at, and it's useful for when we don't want to draw a graph. If your numbers are super big or just really weird, you're not going to want to grab graph paper and graph it to figure out what the slope is. Okay? So let's go ahead and work through some examples, and then at the bottom of the page, we'll talk about special cases. Okay, so this is the algebraic method to find slope, basically, instead of using a picture.
Yeah.
So it says find the slope between -1, 3 and 4, 7. So if you haven't done this before or you're confused, you may want to label things. So the -1, 3 would be x1 and y1. That's the first point, so that's all the first x, first y. And then the 4 would be x2, and the 7 is y2.
Okay.
Okay? We're just going to use the order.
Goes first, right?
X is always first. It's alphabetical, X, Y. And then later on, they'll add in a Z for three-dimensional stuff, but we're not going to do that now. All right, so I copied the slope formula over for us one more time, so we just have it sitting here, y2 minus y1. So the y2 is 7, y1 is 3, so 7 minus 3 is on the top. x2 minus x1 is going to be 4 minus, and then x1 is negative 1. So make sure there's a minus in the formula, and then you'll have a negative. Just make sure you don't lose those anywhere. So 7 minus 3 is 4. And then this 4 minus negative 1 actually becomes 4 plus 1. The negatives cancel out, and we end up with 5. So when you have that subtracting a negative, when we were in middle school, we talked about keep, change, change. You keep the first number, change that to addition, change that to positive 1. It was just a method that we used. Or you can just remember that the negatives, if they're together like that, cancel out. And you can always check that with your calculator. It'll tell you it's 5.
Wait. Why is it positive? Why is it positive?
Because the negatives cancel out. That's what I was just explaining. It's a rule from middle school that they cancel out and become plus. Okay? So, we didn't need to reduce the fraction or anything. We can just move on. So, find the slope between 6, 5 and negative 1, 7. So again, if this is new, you may still want to label x1, y1, x2, y2, just to help you keep everything straight. So we need to do y2 minus y1. So that'd be 7 minus 5. x2 minus x1 is negative 1 minus 6. Okay? So 7 minus 5 is 2. And then the rule, the keep, change, change works for this too. You could change this to negative 1 plus negative 6. And when you do that, basically it's just going to become a bigger negative. It becomes negative 7. Now, normally we don't like to have negatives in the bottom of a fraction, so what they'll do is they'll just write it out in front of the fraction for your final answer.
How would you know which one? Let's say like if you had a graph on the left, how would you know which one would be negative?
So with the graphs, the negative always means go down. And that's why we don't leave it down there. You could leave it, and this would be going up 2 and left 7, but then that kind of switches around the thing. So this is why they don't like leaving the negative in the bottom. If you stick it in front, just remember that negatives make the line go down, and then you're good. Okay, so you guys are going to help me set up the next one. So find the slope between negative 8, 7 and 4, 1. So negative 8 would be my x1, 7 would be my y1, 4 would be my x2, and 1 would be my y2.
Okay.
All right, and so tell me how to set up the top of the fraction.
Negative 8 minus 4.
Nope.
Negative, or 4 minus negative 8. 1 minus 7.
So we need to do y2. So the formula is y2 minus y1. Let me write this down. x2 minus x1. So if we look, y2 is 1, and y1 is 7. So 1 minus 7. So let's try the bottom. We'll be better at the bottom. x2 minus x1 would be what?
4 minus 8 plus. No, minus not
Minus negative 8 is just how we'll write it to start with. Okay? So 1 minus 7 is the same thing. If you want to rewrite it as 1 plus negative 7, you can keep the first number, change this to addition, change that to negative. If you never learned how to do negatives, that doesn't help you a whole lot. But and then you could change this to 4 plus positive 8. So we call it keep, change, change. You keep the first number
Why would you
and change those.
7?
Because it's a process that we learned in middle school to help us. So this tells us we're going to have 1, and then we're going to go backwards 7. You don't have to rewrite it. So this is like I have $1, but I owe 7. So if I pay them the $1 that I have, how much will I still owe? $6, right? So you're still $6 in the hole. This one, the negatives cancel. It's kind of like in English if you say, I don't not like your sweater. It actually means I do like your sweater.
Ooh.
So if I am subtracting a negative, it actually cancels and makes it positive.
Well, why
Okay.
couldn't you just do it normal? 1 minus 7.
You can. It'd be negative 6. But this is the process they learned last year, and that's what I
Oh, wait, then there's
Pick a method. Just pick a method. Okay.
There's something wrong with the equation. It's not simplifying.
Okay, so yeah, we do need to simplify the fraction. And so we're going to simplify that down to negative 1/2. You can divide both of those by 6. Okay? So that's all of my normal things. It's just like the slope yesterday. If you can reduce it, reduce it. If it's improper, reduce it, but leave it improper. No mixed numbers. The last two sets of examples are for special cases. So on this one, what we're going to do, so this is actually two problems. If you want to draw a line down the middle, just so that doesn't confuse you, you can. Just find the slope for each pair of points. So here's my x1, y1, my x2, y2. So my formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? What do I write down for the top part? What am I going to do?
1 minus 2.
Okay, so it's y2 minus y1. So 2 minus 2. So basically the second y minus the first y. Good. Then on the x's, what is x2? 1 minus x1, which is negative 2. Okay, so 2 minus 2 is 0. On the bottom, this becomes 1 plus 2, which should make it 0 over 3. Does it really matter what's on the bottom if I'm taking 0 and dividing it by something? No. So basically 0 divided by anything is just going to be 0. Okay? If I take nothing and divide it among 3 friends, they each get nothing. Okay? So then let's go over and look at this set. This is x1, y1, x2, and y2. Okay, so our formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's start off with this. What's y2?
1,
Negative 1, and then I do minus. What's y1? 2. I'm just putting the numbers in where they are. What's x2? Negative 3 minus, what's x1? Negative 3. There's a whole lot of minuses happening here. So some people prefer, but you don't have to rewrite it as negative 1 plus negative 2. If you don't like that, just keep it the way it is. Some people prefer to go ahead and change this. It'd be negative 3 plus positive 3. So I'm just using the keep, change method from last year. So negative 1 plus negative 2 is like being in the, I owe $1 and then I borrow 2 more, so I'm owe 3. It's like negative 3. Negative 3 and positive 3 cancel. It's like 3 minus 3 gives us 0. I can't divide by 0. I can't divide by nothing. There's like a rule. Things explode. Okay, so when this happens and you get 0 on the bottom, it is undefined. And then we're going to look at the graphs of just those two here in a second, just so you can kind of see how this relates to the graphs. I should have organized this where we did the 0, 1 next to the graph for that, but this is from my PowerPoint, so we'll just do it the order that it is. So if 0 is on the top, your final answer is 0. If 0 is on the bottom, your final answer is undefined. You must write the 0 and the undefined if those are your answers. That is your final answer. Okay, so I copied those points over here just so we could look at it and see what it looks like. So negative 2, 2, we're going to graph. Be left 2 and up 2. There's that point right there. That's negative 2, 2. And then 1, 2 would be over here. 1, 2. And so you can see where that 0 slope comes from. It's because it's a flat line. And that's why we ended up with 0 on the top of our fraction. Okay? So this was a slope of 0, which is what we just got with the formula. I'm just kind of reinforcing some of what we learned yesterday. So negative 3, 2 will be over here. This is negative 3, 2. And negative 3, negative 1 would be right here. And if I connect those, I get a vertical line, which if you remember from the video yesterday is undefined. Undefined slope. Which basically just means it's infinite slope. It is so steep we can't even put a number on it. It's infinitely steep. Straight up and down.
Jeez.
Okay, that is it.